For nearly 2 decades, the AFC North belonged to Mike Tomlin and John Harbaugh. Now both are gone. Aaron Rodgers says this is the final season of his Hall of Fame career. Joe Burrow is trying to get Cincinnati back to the playoffs. Lamar Jackson is leading a new era in Baltimore. And the Browns, well, they're trying to finally get out of football purgatory. This division has dominated the NFL headlines for years. But heading into 2026, it may be more unpredictable than it's ever been. The names have changed, the expectations haven't. Let's get in the trenches and tackle the AFC North. What's happening, everybody? It's Off the Hook, sports talk that pays off. Powered by Pickett. Tommy Trends here with my executive producers, Mookie and Nash. And welcome to 4th and Goal, where winning starts long before the kickoff. And every week here on 4th and Goal, we'll tackle preseason division previews. We'll break down offseason moves, find betting value. We'll look at season win totals, discuss futures, identify key storylines, and throughout the season, we'll bring you in-depth analysis, game previews, reaction, everything college football and the NFL. So whether you're getting ready to place a bet, maybe preparing for a fantasy draft, or you just can't get enough football, you're in the right place. Now let's kick off 2026 NFL Division Preview Series with one of the most physical, one of the most unpredictable, and one of the most fascinating divisions in football, the AFC North. And before we start making predictions, before we hand out win total plays, before we tell you who we think wins this division, let's rewind the clock, because to understand where the AFC North is headed, you first have to understand how we got here. So let's recap the 2025 season. And honestly, I believe this is one of the most fascinating divisions in football heading into 2026. For years, the AFC North was one of the few constants in the NFL. You knew Baltimore was going to be in the playoff hunt. You knew Pittsburgh was going to play physical football and find a way to win games. You knew Cincinnati's season would probably come down to whether Joe Burrow stayed healthy. And Cleveland, well, the Browns are usually trying to figure out how to catch everybody else. But this offseason, everything has changed. 3 of 4 teams in this division have new coaches. John Harbaugh is gone after nearly 2 decades in Baltimore. Mike Tomlin no longer roaming the sidelines in Pittsburgh. And Kevin Stefanski, well, he's out in Cleveland, and now Zach Taylor is the only returning head coach in the entire AFC North, whose seat is probably hotter than the Vegas Strip in July. So think about that for a second. A division that was built on stability is suddenly built on uncertainty. In 2025, it was a strange season. The Steelers won the division at just 10-7. They're the only team in the AFC North to finish with a winning record. The Ravens went 8-9. Cincinnati finished 6-11 after only getting about half a season from Joe Burrow. Well, in Cleveland, cellar dwellers again, finishing in the basement, 5-12. But that's pretty much how it's been going for the Browns for quite some time. So, look, when you look at those standings, this division wasn't won because somebody dominated. It was won because everybody had flaws. And that brings us to the 2026, the offseason leading up to the 2026 season. And what an offseason it has been for this division. The Browns traded Myles Garrett, which is about time. I mean, every year we heard Myles Garrett's going to go here, going to go there. And honestly, I feel bad for Myles Garrett that he wasted so much of his career in Cleveland, which is almost like the Jets, where your career goes to die, pretty much. I mean, there's nothing to write home about in Cleveland. Their record years of futility is it's unprecedented. So Myles Garrett finally heads out of town. Couldn't ask for a better destination to be with the Rams in Southern California. That's pretty much one of the biggest transactions or offseason moves in all the NFL. The Ravens went into a completely new era under Jesse Minter, and then the Steelers brought in hometown kid Mike McCarthy to lead the team there, and reunited him with Aaron Rodgers for one final run, allegedly, with Rodgers. And then Cincinnati looked at a defense that let him down all season and completely rebuilt the front seven. They added Jonathan Allen, Boy Maffey, traded for Dexter Lawrence. They're trying to make sure that Joe Burrow doesn't have to score 35 points every Sunday or wind up on his back every Sunday as well. And then we look at the quarterbacks. Aaron Rodgers says, this is it. This is a swan song. And he's done after this season. Lamar Jackson, well, he has to learn a brand new offense under 30-year-old offensive coordinator Declan Doyle. Joe Burrow simply has to stay healthy. And Cleveland still has one of the biggest quarterback questions in football. And trying to get out of the basement. Look, if quarterback play decides this division, we're in for one heck of a season here. And here's what makes this division so interesting from a betting standpoint. So normally the AFC North feels predictable, right? This year it feels like anything could happen, though. Look, I feel like Baltimore has the highest floor in this division. The Ravens are projected around 11, maybe 11 and a half wins, depending on where you look. And then the Bengals are next. And then you look at Pittsburgh, Cleveland's kind of rounding out where the other projections have come in, and we'll certainly weigh in on that. And obviously, Joe Burrow, if he stays healthy, if Aaron Rodgers has one more run left, if Jesse Minter changes the culture immediately, or if Cleveland can figure out the quarterback situation there, if they can figure out how to get above 500, the numbers could change in a hurry, and we might have quite a few surprises from this division here. So that's basically the setup and how we got here. And like we said, a division that used to be the NFL's most stable has become one of the biggest mysteries heading into this season, which is why I think the AFC North is one of the hardest divisions to really handicap heading into this NFL season. So let's start with the team that, again, finished at the bottom of the standings, the Cleveland Browns. So, again, finishing at the basement of this division, and this team enters a really strange place in 2026. Because on one hand, they're clearly rebuilding and have been rebuilding for years, or so it seems. They may not say it, but the record says otherwise in how they perform year in and year out. They fired Kevin Stefanski. Myles Garrett shipped him out of town. They're still trying to clean up this disaster with Deshaun Watson, and they appear to be positioning themselves for the 2027 quarterback class and trying to just get through the 2026 season. And on the other hand, though, this roster may actually be more talented than what people realize, and we'll get to that. And really, especially outside the quarterback position. Look, we'll get into win totals, but Vegas hung the number around 6.5 wins for them. They're typically ranked at the bottom of the 32 teams, 28, 27, 29, depending on, who your source is, right? But you're going to find them at the bottom 4 or 5 teams from a power ranking perspective, so to speak. 200-1 to win the Super Bowl, 86-1 to win the AFC, 21-1 to win their division. So what the market is clearly telling us here is the Browns are not going to contend. They're not going to contend anytime soon. But the question is whether they're simply bad or whether this team has enough talent to be more competitive than what the market expects. And last year, Browns finishing, like we said, 5-12. They went 8-9 against the spread, finished 8-9 to the over. But the record here really doesn't tell the entire story because this team, this was a team with 2 completely different identities. The offense was one of the worst units in football. The defense was actually pretty damn good. The offense was so bad that the defense never had a realistic chance to carry this team. So let's look at the quarterback mess, right? So the Browns entered last season trying to recapture some of the Joe Flacco magic from 2023. Joe Flacco comes back. He lasted 4 games, was benched, then traded to Cincinnati in Week 6 after Burrow gets hurt. And then now the Browns enter training camp, which is underway. They enter that with 4 quarterbacks. They bring back Flacco, Kenny Pickett, Dylan Gabriel, and Shedeur Sanders. And the old saying, when you have 2 quarterbacks, you have none. Well, when Well, Cleveland, they got 4. And exactly what you would expect happened. Multiple quarterbacks played. Flacco, Gabriel, Santos, each handled more than a quarter of the offensive snaps. Offense never developed any real rhythm or identity, really, right? The offense was a disaster. Statistically, Cleveland was near the bottom of the league in almost every meaningful offensive category. And we'll give you some of those stats here. They averaged only 16.4 points per game. That ranked 31st. They averaged 262.1 total yards per game, 30th in the league. They averaged just 4.3 yards per play, and that was dead last in the NFL. They ranked 31st in passing yards per game, 31st in yards per pass attempt, 32nd in completion percentage, and only 29th on third down. And Cleveland finished 31st in EPA per play. That's not just a bad offense. This is an offense that barely functions, can barely get out of first gear. Now we talked about the defense, where the defense never really had a chance to even help the offensive win any types of games because the offense was so futile. They just couldn't get anything done. But the defense, when you look at the numbers, they're actually one of the better units in all of football. They ranked 4th in total yards allowed, 4th in yards allowed per play, 3rd in passing yards allowed, 3rd in sacks, 7th on third down. They allowed 22.3 points per game, which ranked 14th in the league, so kind of like middle of the pack. But you really, when you look at that number even really needs context to it. Cleveland's defense had the worst average starting field position in football. So the opponent, so again, they're already starting behind the 8 ball here. Opponents were beginning drives on average at Cleveland's 35-yard line, give or take, somewhere. It's like 34.6, 34.7 yard line. So we'll just say the 35-yard line is where their opponents were typically starting on average. And despite constantly being put in these bad situations, the Browns still finished 5th in the percentage of drives ending in points. So what that tells you, the defense was better than the raw scoring number would suggest here. And then, obviously, Myles Garrett, his final year in Cleveland, that was the biggest bright spot, obviously, which the whole time Myles Garrett has been there, he's pretty much been the whole bright spot for that team. Garrett set the NFL single-season sack record with 23 sacks. No other Brown defender had more than 6.5. But Garrett's presence really changed every protection scheme that Cleveland faced. He still helped the Browns finish 3rd in sacks, 5th in pressure rate. He was literally the engine up front. Obviously. And well, now he gone. So, biggest question here coming into this season, obviously, outside of losing Garrett, is who's going to play quarterback? And that's, look, the Cleveland Browns have been a revolving door at the quarterback position for years. Baker Mayfield probably it was, they should never got rid of Baker Mayfield, obviously. But it was a better situation for him to get out of there. Look, again, this is just similar to the New York Jets, where this is where your career begins and ends if you get drafted here. Baker was lucky enough to get out. Myles Garrett, while he still has some gas left in the tank, he gets shipped to the Rams. Potentially could win a Super Bowl with that team. That team's loaded. But a lot of other guys, though, they don't get that chance, and their careers begin and end here. We've seen it so many times. It seems like every year or every other year, Browns are drafting a quarterback, and they feel like they have the answer, and then by week 3, they're pretty much out of it, right? So going to the quarterback situation here, I mean, you look at this team with the quarterback situation, who the hell is going to start for this? And that's a fair question. I mean, Deshaun Watson, look, they would take nearly $128 million cap hit if they got rid of Deshaun Watson, right? Now, he is in the final year of his contract, I believe. Let me see. So, yeah. So, So rumor has it the Browns are planning to get out of this deal come March 2027. So it would be about $127 million of dead cap hit if they try to get out of this, because the $230 million contract that he wasn't even worth the $230 million that they paid him to begin with. But if they release him right now, because that $230 million is fully guaranteed, again, they take about $127 million in dead cap hit. So they are expected to release him in 2027. So it would be March 2027 is really when they're expected to get out of this. But again, they're still stuck with him for this season here, which, again, it's a complete mess, right? He has not played since October of 2024 after he tore his Achilles. He's only played 19 games since 2020. And obviously he's not the long-term answer. They would have got rid of him most likely a while ago if they wouldn't be taking a cap hit here because they fully guaranteed his contract. But again, that's on them because they paid him way too much money to start. So, well, then there's Shedeur Sanders, right? He started 7 games and appeared once in relief last season. He completed only 56.6% of his passes. Through 7 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, averaged just 175 passing yards per game. Those numbers are not good at all. Now, there is still a legitimate argument that Cleveland could and maybe should give him the opportunity because we all know Deshaun Watson is not the future. He's pretty much, if it was me, I'd just make him hold the fucking clipboard all season because I'd rather roll the dice with Flacco, Gabriel, or Shedeur Sanders at this point, to be honest with you. Again, they're stuck with Watson, but now they got to figure out who's actually going to start. And it ain't going to be Deshaun Watson. Again, I'd rather roll with Joe Flacco from that standpoint, right? And then you look at Dylan Gabriel. He only started 6 games, had much better touchdown to interception ratio, 7 touchdowns, only two interceptions. But he averaged just 153 passing yards per start, so he did protect the football better. And he also didn't show that he could consistently push that offense, what little offense they have. So the quarterback debate really comes down to, I guess, do you play Watson? Do you play Shedeur? Do you give Gabriel an opportunity? Yeah, Kenny Pickett, right? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. But I did find a funny clip, though, of Flacco. Before getting into this breakdown here, this was a funny clip of, let me start this over. So this was Joe Flacco roasting Shedeur Sanders on wearing a visor. This is probably one of the better clips from Flacco and really roasting Shedeur Sanders here.
You got the mirror visor on again? I see it. You notice Shedeur don't have just like a clear visor. He's got the clear mirror.
Why do they when you're growing up, they're like, take your fucking visor off. Who do you think you are? It's like,
it's that. Yeah, but if you wear a visor, you think it's for look. You think you look sweet. It's that era. I don't want my kids to wear visors either. They all want visors. I'm like, guys, they're not even they're just annoying. They're gonna fog up. They are.
They look sweet, and then when you take them off, you can breathe so much better.
Yeah, they fucking suck, dude.
But it looks swaggy, so you can back up.
It's all about look. When I was a kid, I wanted a visor too, and then I'm like, the visors suck. They don't make any sense. So you're not gonna let your kids wear a visor? I would let them wear it, but I would tell them, you're a quarterback, bro. You're fucking wearing a visor. You look like a fucking idiot. If you're a quarterback and there's something about being a quarterback.
Just skin on each other. You always go. Why do you tell it? He's so tough.
If you're a quarterback and you're trying to look, you can tell you're trying to look too sweet, then.
But I like my mirror.
I get it.
That's one of the greatest clips of Flacco roasting Shedeur Sanders, which he's really not wrong. They are kind of fucking stupid, but so let's look at from an offseason standpoint, what else the Browns tried to do here, because, again, it really becomes interesting. They are rebuilding, But some things I do like how they attacked this roster. They didn't just tear everything down. They really started building a foundation when you look at it. So, and now I'm not really sure on Todd Monken if he's the answer here as a head coach. We'll find out. But Kevin Stefanski, he gone. But before we completely bury the Stefanski era, he did things Browns coaches had not done in decades. He led Cleveland to the playoffs twice, believe it or not. He was the first Browns coach since Marty Schottenheimer in the 1980s to make multiple postseason appearances. And his 6 seasons were the longest tenure for a Browns coach since Sam Rutigliano. Probably who the fuck is that? Exactly. Who the fuck is that? Because it's the Browns are a revolving door at coach and quarterback. And again, now another coach at the helm, Todd Monken, decided to say, see you later, Stefanski, which I think it was time. And I think now I don't know how he's going to do in Atlanta, but definitely there's better ownership down there. Better overall roster, but I don't think it was really Stefanski's. I don't think he was really the main problem, right? There's a lot of problems, but again, I think it was good for both sides that they moved on. But again, I don't know if Monken is the right coach for this situation, but we'll see. I mean, he was the offensive coordinator in Baltimore, but his only other prior head coaching experience came at Southern Miss. That was more than a decade ago. So this is his first NFL head coaching job, and this team's not ready to contend. So patience is really going to be part of the evaluation when you look at Monken. Then new offensive staff, obviously. So Monken brings in Travis Switzer as offensive coordinator. Switzer was Baltimore's run game coordinator. So you would expect a run-first foundation here with the new look Browns in 2026. A lot of tight end involvement, play action, and an offense that's really going to be designed to create easy throws and yards after the catch. But there is one obvious difference here, though, right? The Browns don't have fucking Lamar Jackson, nor do they have Derrick Henry. So this system has to be adapted to fit the personnel here in Cleveland. And again, the question is, who the hell is going to start at quarterback? Is it Gabriel? Is it Sanders? Is it Watson? Again, in my opinion, I wouldn't mind giving Joe Flacco a call and see what the fuck he's doing. I know the fuck Joe Flacco is, to be honest with you. But if he's not an option to come out of retirement or wherever he's at, look, I'd rather roll the dice with Sanders or Gabriel, and Watson would be holding the clipboard till next March when they can get out of this fucking mess. Now, what the Browns did do, one of the biggest things that they did that I do like what they've done here, they completely rebuilt the offensive line. And let's be honest, they needed to rebuild that, right? Last year's offensive line was awful. They averaged 3.6 yards per carry, ranked nearly the bottom of the league in every rushing efficiency category. And Spencer Fano is a new left tackle. Guard Zion Johnson comes in. Added center Elgin Jenkins, right tackle Titus Howard, third-round tackle Austin Barber, and a fifth-round center Parker Brailsford. Look, that's not a patch or a Band-Aid. That's a complete reconstruction of that offensive line. And they did lose people up front, so they had to fill those holes. Joel Bitonio, Jack Conklin, Wyatt Teller, Ethan Posick, Cam Robinson, Cornelius Lucas. Massive amount of experience gone walking out the door. So while this new group may have more upside, it's also going to be a long-term chemistry issue. It could be a chemistry issue until they all get acclimated with one another. Look, bringing in pretty much completely overhauling your offensive line, they don't really become a unit that's going to gel overnight. So it's going to take time. And they also they did make an investment at wide receiver. Casey Concepcion selected him in the first round, and then selected Denzel Boston in the second round, and added Tylan Wallace. Now that gives the Browns a more athletic and explosive receiver room around Jerry Jeudy. And this may actually be a more talented wide receiving core than Monken and Switzer had in Baltimore. When you look at it, the upside here that they could have here in Cleveland. So the offense should be built around yards after the catch. You don't want to ask the quarterback here to make impossible throws, right? Easy throws downfield, looking to get as many yards after the catch as they can. Basically, just put it on target and then let the players create. Should really be their philosophy here. As again, you have a new offensive line, you're bringing in new guys at wide receiver. The quarterback position is still a question mark. So you got to keep it simple. And again, look at Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders' numbers last year. Look, I'm not even considering Watson in this equation, but when you look at Gabriel and Sanders, they weren't affected by any means. Their numbers were, I mean, they weren't good. Let's just put it that way. And then you look at what did Monken do in Baltimore? Well, use a lot of tight end formations. So there was a major part of his offense in Baltimore. Now, the Browns may be able to replicate some of what he did there. Harold Fannin Jr. gives them a legitimate receiving weapon. They also signed Jack Stoll, drafted Joe Royer. So he's really to handle more of the blocking work. So David Njoku's gone. Browns still have tight end room that fits with what Monken really wants to do here with this team. And then we said, Myles Garrett, he's gone. And then you bring in an excellent young pass rusher, Jared Verse. So he was a top 10 edge rusher according to Pro Football Focus. And he accomplished that while only playing 76% of the defensive snaps. So he is going to play a lot more in Cleveland. And look, he's not Myles Garrett, but he does. He gives this rebuild that Cleveland is undertaking here a legitimate young cornerstone. And they do have a young defensive core. They do have some talent left here on defense. Jared Verse, as we said, Carson Schlesinger, Denzel Ward, Mason Graham, Quincy Williams, rookie safety Emmanuel McNeil-Warren. Like, in fact, the Browns now have the last two defensive rookies of the year in Verse and Schlesinger. So this is not a defense that's starting from zero. The defense is really going to help keep them in games. They're building the foundation on defense, which I commend them for that. The question is whether the new staff can maintain the level of play without Garrett. That's a big void to fill. And again, new defensive coordinator here, Jim Schwartz, also gone, and that matters because he was a major part of why Cleveland's defense remained competitive year in and year out. So Mike Ruttenberg takes over as defensive coordinator. He was Atlanta's defensive pass game coordinator last season. Before that, he coached linebackers for the Jets. This is a major unknown because while we said replacing Garrett is a big void that they need to fill, replacing Garrett and a defensive coordinator, someone like a Jim Schwartz or someone of Schwartz's caliber, so that you have a defensive coordinator you're replacing Myles Garrett all at the same time. Look, that creates a real challenge here. Now, again, their defense is solid and they do have upside, so it's not like they completely rebuilt the defense. It's just, again, it's a lot to. It's just going to be a challenge to get over losing Garrett and Jim Schwartz. So again, let's take a quick look here at the schedule. We said the number for projected win total is 6.5. And look, their schedule, when you look at it, it's not just the quarterback room and who's going to play quarterback. It also has to do with the way this schedule was structured. Really, when you look at the schedule, the Browns are only really favored in 2 games all season. Possibly the Raiders and the Falcons. Only 2 potential favorites, the games that they would be favored in all season. So look, for the Browns to reach 7 wins, they'd have to win multiple games as an underdog and likely pull off a major upset. I don't see it happening. I mean, their early schedule with Cleveland's brutal. They play 6 road games in the first 9 weeks, and then from weeks 7 through 9, 3 straight road games, Tennessee, at Pittsburgh, at New Orleans. It's difficult for any team, especially difficult for a first-year head coach. a new offensive system, a rebuild offensive line, quarterback question, a new defensive coordinator, replacing. I mean, there's a lot that's stacked against them there. A late bye week. Bye week doesn't arrive till week 11. That might sound like a small detail, but look, for a rookie head coach and a roster that underwent this much change, the late bye matters. The coaching staff doesn't have an early opportunity to stop, evaluate what is working, what's not working, and make major adjustments. They have to navigate 10 weeks before getting that reset button. And then look at the strength of schedule. They ranked 25th out of 32 teams here when you look at the strength of schedule. So overall, their schedule it's not really an impossible schedule. It's not. Look, it's one of the easiest schedules in the league. It's just it's the Browns, right? And also the sequence in the schedule, like we mentioned, week 7 through 9, 3 straight road games at Tennessee, at Pittsburgh, at New Orleans. And I'm just looking here at they start out week 1 at Jacksonville. And if you look, the trend says home teams are 6-3 against the spread in the last 9. Like, it's a difficult opener for Todd Monken and the Browns, and then you stay there in Florida, and next week, week 2, you're in Tampa Bay. Last 7 Browns-Bucks meetings have gone under the total. So right off the bat, Cleveland opening with 2 road games. So, and this could be potentially 2 road games where you see the offense really struggle. Then they get Carolina at home, and then week 4, you're already playing a division opponent. You're playing Pittsburgh. They're just going to beat up on each other. Now, one thing, I guess from a betting perspective, Cleveland is 7-2 against the spread in last 9 home games against Pittsburgh. And then week 6, Baltimore comes to town. And then we talked about 7 through 9 and those 3 straight road games. I'm looking here. And then week 13, you get the Bengals. Week 16 at Baltimore. I mean, again, schedule 25th out of 32 teams. So on the easier side, it's just going to be tough, I feel, for them to get over that 6.5 number that Vegas set the win total at for this season. Last season the Browns ranked 4th in total defense, but 30th in total offense. 3rd in passing yards allowed, 31st in passing yards produced, 3rd in sacks. But they couldn't protect the quarterback consistently or create any type of explosion on offense. This was one of the most extreme offensive-defensive splits when you look at the league numbers. That really is the entire Browns handicap. When you look at it, the offense becomes merely average. This team could surprise some people, but if the quarterback play is at or near the bottom, even a good defense may not be enough to help this team out. So that number 6.5. Look, I understand why the number might be tempting for people to take the over. You improve their offensive line. The receiver room looks better. Like we said, potentially more upside, more talent than what they had to work with in Baltimore. Monken's track record of designing productive offenses, and even without Myles Garrett, the defense has legitimate building blocks in place here. So there is a path for Cleveland to surprise people, potentially be competitive. But being competitive and winning 7 games is not the same thing. I feel like under is the play with Cleveland here. I mean, you don't know who's playing quarterback, regardless of who it is. It's still one of the weakest still one of the weakest quarterback rooms in the NFL. I'm just looking at this schedule. Again, the under has to be the play here. But again, it's really comes down to the question mark at quarterback here. And then you look here, looking at the schedule again. Well, it's like we mentioned, they're only favored, or expected to be favored in only 2 games out of the entire schedule. They play 6 road games in their first 9 weeks. Like, the cards are stacked against them here. 3 consecutive road games, like we said, in weeks 7, 8, 9, and then the late bye in week 11. So the rebuild on offensive line, the coaching staff, you lost Myles Garrett, new defensive coordinator. That's a complete unknown. There's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of question marks with this team, which, again, my official verdict here, under 6.5 wins. I think they are building this the right way. They do have some upside on both the offensive and defensive side of the ball. I just don't think it's going to happen this season for the Cleveland Browns. I think, again, they're going to be bottom of the division. They'll be under the 6.5 wins. But that's enough talk on the fucking Cleveland Browns. Holy shit. Did not expect to go that long in the Cleveland Browns, but under 6.5 for the Cleveland Browns. Let's go to the 3 more interesting teams in this division, and let's stay in Ohio and go to Cincinnati and look at the Cincinnati Bengals. This is probably the most frustrating team in the AFC North over the past few years because, unlike Cleveland, nobody questions whether Cincinnati has enough star power on both sides of the ball. They have one of the best quarterbacks in football. They have one of the best wide receiver duos in football. And look, of course, when Joe Burrow is healthy, the offense is capable of beating anybody. But eventually, the excuses run out. Vegas hung the number at the win total for the Bengals this season at 9.5. The odds to win the AFC North are plus 190, 10-1 to win the AFC, 20-1 to win the Super Bowl. And they are graded around 15 if you look at power rankings. So the 15th best team in the NFL. Now, last season, that 6-11 number, again, if you look at that, you're like, oh, well, this team sucks. Well, no, there was injuries, right? The biggest being Joe Burrow. And you know, you're getting that 9.5, which I think that's a low number. But the market still believes this team is a legit playoff contender. I think that the 9.5 is low. But honestly, the biggest question is, are the Bengals one healthy season away from getting back to the Super Bowl conversation, or are we just overrating a team that has missed the playoffs 3 straight years? So let's look back real quick on 2025. Like, it was another painful season for Bengals fans. Joe Burrow again hurt. Defense couldn't fucking stop anybody. And again, they were at home watching everybody else in the playoffs. And that seems to have become the story of late for the Bengals since they reached the Super Bowl. They have struggled really to put together a complete team. Look, obviously Burrow's injuries haven't played a huge role, but they aren't the only reason. So in 2024, when you look at Burrow, look, he was MVP type level of play. Cincinnati still missed the playoffs because the defense allowed nearly 26 points a game. And last season, it got even worse. The Bengals were allowed almost 29 points a game. They were 31st in total defense, dead last in yards allowed per play, 32nd against the run, 28th on third down, and only ranked 22nd in sacks. That wasn't just a below-average defense. This was the worst defense Cincinnati has fielded since Joe Burrow has entered the league. And that's why I think the record is so fascinating, because if Burrow had stayed healthy, like, I still don't even know if that team would have made the playoffs. The defense simply wasn't good. They were really bad. But again, coming into this season, obviously the biggest question is Joe Burrow. And like every season that he's been in Cincinnati, everything has started with Joe Burrow. It's not a football debate anymore. It's a health debate when it comes to Burrow, because when Joe Burrow is healthy, he's one of the top 5 quarterbacks in all football. He might even be higher, just with his moxie and how he plays. The problem is he hasn't been healthy enough to get it done. His rookie year ended with a devastating knee injury, and then lost most of training camp in 2022 because of a ruptured appendix, missed the final 7 games of 2023 with a wrist injury, and then last season, week 2 turf toe required surgery and cost him 9 games. So that means since Joe Burrow has entered the league, he's completed only 3 full seasons out of 6. And again, Burrow's health isn't the only question, but it's unquestionably the biggest one here, because if Burrow misses significant time again, you could probably kiss this Cincinnati Bengals chance of getting to the playoffs goodbye. Just light the ticket on fire. The good news, the Bengals brought back Joe Flacco. Well, there's my answer to where the fuck Joe Flacco was. So you do have a veteran backup here with Flacco. Look, Flacco is still effective. There's a lot worse you could do than Joe Flacco. So, really, this team, this franchise goes really as far as Joe Burrow is capable of taking it. No, the offense isn't the only problem here. Here's why it's interesting when you try to handicap the Bengals. The offense isn't the issue. Jamar Chase, he's still elite. T. Higgins is back. Chase Brown is back. The offensive line is basically unchanged after re-signing Orlando Brown Jr. and Dalton Risner. Dan Pitcher, he's coming back as offensive coordinator. So if you're looking strictly at the personnel, it's almost the same offense they're going to trot out on the field. That's one of the biggest questions. Look, what is the definition of insanity here? Because the Bengals are essentially running it back offensively, right? They say doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result is a definition of insanity. Well, are the Bengals fucking insane for essentially running back the same offensive unit that they had? The offense has been good, but has it already reached the ceiling here? Have we already seen the best version of this offensive unit? Or really, is Joe Burrow, is he now healthy enough to kick it to another level or hit another gear with this offense? That makes for a fascinating conversation, I think. Look, when you look at Cleveland, when you look at Cincinnati, second in the NFL in pass attempts, ninth in percentage of drives ending in points, 18 yards per play during Burrow's last full healthy season. So, look, we know this offense is good. The question is whether simply bringing everybody back is enough when the defense still has so much to prove here. And look, unlike Cleveland, the Bengals, they weren't trying to rebuild in the offseason. They were trying to fix one side of the football, the defense. Because when the front office looked back at 2025, they didn't blame Joe Burrow. They didn't blame Jamar Chase. They didn't blame the offense. They blamed the defense. It simply wasn't good enough. And honestly, I think they were right. Last season, the Bengals ranked 30th in points allowed, 31st in total defense, dead last in yards allowed per play, 32nd against the run, 31st in rushing yards per attempt, 28th on third down. Look, you're not going to win consistently with those types of numbers. So Cincinnati attacked their defense aggressively in the offseason. Traded for Dexter Lawrence, signed Jonathan Allen. They added Boye Maffey. They brought in Brian Cook. They signed Kyle Duggar. Then they drafted edge rusher Cassius Howell. They drafted corner Tacario Davis. This wasn't adding one or two pieces here. This was a complete overhaul on defense for the Bengals. And the message was pretty clear. Our offense is championship caliber. Now let's build a defense that can support that offense. So think about what the Bengals are telling us. They didn't spend the offseason to score more points. They spent the offseason trying to keep other teams from scoring, basically. And that says a lot about a front office. The front office knows exactly why they missed the playoffs last year. And, again, we talk about the offense staying together. Like we said, little's changed on that side of the ball. But the biggest question, too, or one of the bigger questions is, look, how hot is Zach Taylor's seat? We said it's hotter than the Vegas Strip in July. And I think this is one of the storylines people are they're really not talking about this. It's more of Burrow's health. Let's talk about Zach Taylor. So this is his 8th season. He's entering his 8th season here in Cincinnati. Took him to the Super Bowl, obviously. But then the Bengals have missed the playoffs in 3 straight seasons. And yes, Joe Burrow's injuries, you can only use that excuse so many times. Again, they do matter, but that can't be the answer forever if you're not making the playoffs and you're not getting it done and not hitting your expectations that you have entering the season. Again, that excuse has to me that excuse has run out. The Joe Burrow injuries, Because even when Burrow was played at MVP level, the Bengals still missed the playoffs because the defense couldn't stop anybody. It was like a fucking turnstile, and it just fucking went right through them. So at some point, Zach Taylor, he's got to own these results, and I think this season is this is do or die for Zach Taylor. I'm gonna be honest with you. Look, if the Bengals get off to another slow start, they're sitting below 500 midway through the season, maybe even before the midway point. Look, I think Zach Taylor could be gone fairly quick if they get off to a slow start. Because at that point, the conversation changes from can Burrow stay healthy and now becomes, is Zach Taylor really the right guy to lead this football team? You know, because I believe he's one of the coaches under the most. He's probably, he's top 3, top 5. He might be the coach with the most amount of pressure coming in to this season. Like, again, if Joe Burrow gets hurt week 1 or week 2, you know, obviously that is going to come into play, but I just feel like that excuse has now been used too many times. At some point, you got to have a backup. Again, Flacco, look, if Burrow goes down early, is Flacco serviceable to get them to the playoffs with this team? Sure. But then if Burrow does get hurt again and misses some extended period of time or misses the rest of the season, I think then not only is Zach Taylor is his job in question, but then the offseason then will lead to, is Joe Burrow really the answer to quarterback if he gets injured again? So there's a lot of things on the line here, specifically Zach Taylor's job. And look at the schedule. They're 29th toughest schedule in the league. So, look, on paper, when you look at the schedule, the Bengals clearly have a path to exceed the 9.5 wins that Vegas projects them at entering the season. A late bye, week 9. So that's a good spot, though. So the team that depends or relies heavily on Joe Burrow staying healthy down the stretch. It's not a bad spot. A little later in the season, but it's kind of like the halfway point. Now, if games that kind of jump out to me when I'm looking at the schedule here, you know, obviously these division games against Pittsburgh and Baltimore. From a betting perspective, Pittsburgh has covered 13 of the last 19 meetings at home against Cincinnati, and the Ravens have covered 7 of the last 8 trips to Cincinnati. So again, their season schedule is favorable as it comes in at the bottom of the league at ranked 29th. The AFC North, though, is still going to determine whether this team gets over 9.5 wins. And we said it's not about Joe Burrow. We know how good he is. It's the defense here. If this defense can climb from 30th to somewhere around league average, the Bengals become a legit playoff team again, provided Joe Burrow is still healthy. They don't need a top 5 defense. They don't even need a top 10 defense. They just can't be one of the worst defenses in the entire NFL. Because if that happens again, it doesn't matter if Joe Burrow is lighting the world on fire from an offensive standpoint. We're probably going to have this same conversation next year at the same time with the Bengals. So again, defense has to just be kind of middle of the pack, and that's a huge improvement for where they were last year. So do we get to this number of 9.5? And to me, this might be one of the toughest numbers on the board. And I understand why people like the over Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, a rebuilt defense, and one of the easier schedules amongst playoff contending teams. Again, they don't have a lot of margin for error here. If Burrow misses time, the team probably isn't winning 10 games. Now, again, is Joe Flacco serviceable? Yeah. What do they do if he gets hurt then, right? Because, again, he's not necessarily spring chicken anymore in Joe Flacco, but he's serviceable and can get them through. And if Burrow would miss an extended period of time, could Flacco get them to the playoffs? Yeah. Be asking a lot, depending on how late in the season or how early in the season that would happen. But again, Burrow misses any extended period of time, I don't see them winning 10 games because the margin for error is small here. And another question is, do these new pieces on defense, can they come together immediately, or are they going to struggle and it's going to take some time? And which could mean you're sitting right around that number again. But however, I'm going to go, my official verdict here, I'm taking over 9.5 because, again, Joe Burrow, healthy. Hopefully he stays that way. But I feel like the Bengals identified exactly what was wrong. They didn't panic. They didn't rip the roster apart. They kept one of the best offenses in the league together. And they just invested heavily on fixing the defensive side of the ball. And like we say, I don't think they need to become an elite defensive team. They simply need to become an average team. And if Joe Burrow can give them 17 games, and we said defense is middle of the pack, I think Cincinnati gets back to the playoffs. Now, how deep they go, that's a question we can have later on in the season. But if they stumble out the gate, don't be surprised if the spotlight shifts from Joe Burrow to Zach Taylor, and then Zach Taylor is unemployed, right? Because, again, he's got it's do or die, I think, for Zach Taylor. It's put up or shut up at this point. And, heading into his 8th season, he's got to get it done. And you can't use the Burrow injury if he gets hurt. You can't use that as an excuse. I'm taking Cincinnati. On paper, everybody's healthy. Even if the defense struggles coming out of the gate and Burrow's healthy and they're still winning games, now the defense can't struggle as bad as they did last year. But again, it's going to take time for some of these guys to come together as a unit, which rightfully so. But they should still, even if they're learning how to play with one another, I still feel that the talent is better than where they were last year. So, again, I like Cincinnati to go over here. And then we say Cleveland under. So we got Cleveland under 6.5. We got Cincinnati now. We have over 9.5. Now let's get to the Baltimore Ravens. And honestly, this is one of the more fascinating teams in the AFC North because a year ago, the Ravens, they were legit Super Bowl contenders. Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, of course, John Harbaugh was there. One of the most respected organizations in all of football. Now you fast forward one season, they finish 8-9, they miss the playoff. John Harbaugh gone after 18 seasons, and the Ravens begin one of the biggest organizational transitions in franchise history. But here's the interesting part when you look at the betting market. Vegas isn't panicking at all. They still have, the Ravens are still minus 115 favorites to win the AFC North. They're plus 500 to win the AFC, 10-1 odds to win the Super Bowl. And they're rated around power ranking around the 4th best team in football. So the betting market is telling us last year was an exception and not the rule. The question is Baltimore ready, and are they capable of bouncing back this year? Or was 2025 the beginning of something bigger? Now, you look last year, this was unlike anything we've seen from Baltimore in a long time, especially in a John Harbaugh team. The Ravens opened the year with high expectations of getting to the Super Bowl. Instead, they blew a 15-point fourth-quarter lead in Week 1 against Buffalo. And they started the season 1-5. They fought their way back to the AFC North race, but the season ended up with Taylor Loop missing that 44-yard field goal against Pittsburgh, and that would become the final game in the John Harbaugh era in Baltimore. And look, injuries always play a massive role, but Nnamdi Madubuike missed virtually the entire season. That changed the defense. Now this is uncharacteristic for Ravens defense. 28th in pressure percentage, 28th in sacks. They couldn't get to the quarterback. They couldn't even pressure the quarterback, let alone get to the quarterback. They gave up the most completions at 20 yards or more in the NFL. This isn't a coincidence. When you don't affect the quarterback, we don't put pressure on the quarterback, explosive plays are going to happen. And then you have Lamar Jackson. Well, he also battled injuries too. He missed 4 games, and statistically, it was his least productive season of his entire career. His passing yards dropped from 245 per game to 196, but he was sub 200 passing yards per game last season. Touchdown passes were nearly cut in half from the prior season. He went from 41 to 21 last year. And the most shocking, really, when you look at Lamar Jackson's numbers from last year, he rushed for a career low 349 yards. This was the season after he ran for 915 yards the season before. So, I mean, again, they're missing that spark there from Lamar Jackson. So another big question here, can Jesse Minter, can he restart the Super Bowl window? And I actually don't think the biggest question is Lamar Jackson, right? We already know he's one of the top quarterbacks in the league. But the question here is, can Jesse Minter get this organization back to where it expects to be? Because look, that's another tough void to fill with John Harbaugh. It's not just another coach we're replacing. The guy was there nearly 2 decades. He has one Super Bowl, and it's one of the most. He was running one of the most respected teams, one of the most respected cultures in all professional sports. But I do like the hire with Jesse Minter. He isn't walking in to Baltimore trying to reinvent everything. He already coached in this organization. He worked under Harbaugh. He coached under Jim Harbaugh in Michigan. He spent the last 2 seasons, as the offensive coordinator. One of the NFL's better defenses. He was the defensive coordinator of the Chargers, right? So the last 2 seasons. So while there are changes there, I don't think the identity changes with this Ravens team. It still feels like Ravens football when you look at it, especially when you look at Minter's coaching past and his, where he's been and who he's worked with. The bigger change, though, how I feel, and maybe on the offense with Declan Doyle. Now, he's only 30 years old, which is fascinating. He's only 10 months older than Lamar Jackson. That's crazy. Now, he does come from the Sean Payton coaching tree. He helped Ben Johnson in Chicago, and now gets to work with 2-time MVP quarterback and Lamar Jackson, also Derrick Henry. Look, I think you're going to see the offense. They still have pieces together, and I think this is going to be good for both Minter and Doyle with this team that they're inheriting here. So I think from an offensive standpoint, you'll see more pre-snap motion, more creativity here, and potentially a version of Lamar Jackson that looks much closer to his 2024 MVP form. I think this is one of the biggest X factors in the entire NFL this season. And I do have a clip here. There's another clip I want to play too, but I'll get to this clip here of Ravens players talking about Declan Doyle and what they expect here this season with him.
Good, Tess. Here we go. Good. I like it. Here we go.
The offense is going to be fire, though.
Yeah, is there a defining trait of Declan that you notice real quick from being around him? Something that kind of stands out?
He got the same mentality as us.
I feel like our coaches is like one of us in a sense.
It's easier to relate to him because we could talk like we friends, what he expect of me and what he expect of us. So it's easier to communicate in that way.
He's been awesome. First and foremost as a teacher, I think is the main thing that kind of, sticks out is he's incredibly good at teaching this offense and really, understands it from every different aspect of it.
Yeah. I mean, we learn.
You guys learn. Yeah, you guys learn them. All right, let's go.
He teach you in a certain way where you remember the plays where there's not too much stress on you, but he give you a lot.
Rasheen, a little more with your shoulders, that first step. Like that first step should look like I'm running wide zone to the linebacker. Yeah, you're just a little square here. Okay, you took the first step, but just a little turn, and then I'm crossover roll and downhill. Does that make sense?
He was able to, kind of dive into each position group.
Say you're taking an angle at the butt of this guy to cut him out. These will all be on one, okay? On one. Whole point is that they're jumping your cadence, okay? And we're trying to pry the defense open. So Tank, what could you do better right here? Hit a better landmark. We're trying to stretch this thing on the front side, right? Once you hand that thing, I know he's a little wide, okay? Once you hand that thing, try to stick that right foot in the ground and go make the turn. I know that he's wide right there. I got it.
Super smart. He loves the game of football, and he's a really good leader as well.
Oh, he's a genius. He got stuff that I've never seen.
Sometimes he see things that I don't see, you know. Sometimes I see things that he might have not thought of, you know, just great. And I feel like we need that.
We know all the plays now. You got it. All right, let's be as detailed as we possibly can be right here. 18 reps.
I think the thing that, Coach Declan's trying to get us to accomplish is that details matter, and I think it's super important.
His creativity with his mind and how detailed he is, it's like mind-blowing.
Focus on the details and, good things will happen. I think that the more attention you can, pay attention to stuff like that, you're going to be a system that's going to be hard to fail.
I want to be detailed as well, keep the defense honest. So we doing everything right, the little things right. Defense don't know what we're doing, what we're capable of on offense any given play. And with the type of coach that Declan is bringing, that I believe he's bringing, like the sky's the limit.
He's got to snap you faster than that,
yeah.
So you don't get buried in there. Does that make sense? So all it's going to feel like, you're running shallow. You're going to be a little steeper than normal, and you're going to get that dude to run. You'll feel when he starts to play over the top.
Yeah.
You're running it off of a dude.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. Boom. What you say, Coach? Oh, yeah.
I mean, watching that, players seem to like what Declan Doyle is doing with this offensive unit. So, and also one thing to mention here, when you look at the offensive line reboot, Lamar Jackson sacked 36 times in just 13 games. And 1 year earlier, he was sacked only 23 times in 17 games. And even Derrick Henry felt the difference last year. His yards before contact dropped from 3.1 to 2.8 per carry. Now, he still led the NFL in runs of 20-plus yards, but his average dropped from 5.9 yards per carry to 5.2. And they ranked 32nd in pass block win rate at guard. So Baltimore attacked this in the offseason. They brought in John Simpson, they signed veteran center Ethan Posick, and they used the 14th overall pick on guard Oli Vavega Ione. I don't know, I probably fucked that up, but you get what I'm saying. They attacked their inefficiencies on the offensive line, and that's where the organization, and you can tell that's where they believed the problem was. So again, they weren't rebuilding here; they were fixing the foundation. And then look, the pass rush is back here too, because again, last season uncharacteristic of a Ravens type defense. And a major priority in the offseason was how do we get back to pressuring the quarterback again and getting after the quarterback? Because last season, the Ravens went from 54 sacks in 2024 to only 30 sacks last season. They ranked 28th in pressure rate. That's not Baltimore Ravens football, and that's not what they've been known for. So they went shopping. Of course, there was a Max Crosby trade fallout with concerns over his physical, so they backed out. But then almost immediately after that, they pivoted and signed Trey Hendrickson, and I love that move, getting Hendrickson. While I like Max Crosby, I think Hendrickson... it might have been okay that the Crosby deal fell through, or they had concerns over his physical. But again, quick pivot. You now have Trey Hendrickson, and look, what more can we say with Trey Hendrickson? Trey Hendrickson, he's one of the league's elite pure pass rushers, right? And then they drafted Zion Young, and I believe that he complements Hendrickson perfectly. Hendrickson attacks the quarterback. And now Young gives it more against the run here. So when you combine those two with a healthy Matabuke, this defensive front suddenly looks a lot different than it did a year ago. All right, but again, not played on paper. You gotta stay healthy and you gotta play up to your potential or better. So the defense should bounce back, which is why I think the Ravens are one of the safer bounce back candidates, kind of like we said a couple weeks ago when we talked about, or actually it was last week when we said about the NFC North and the Lions buying the bounce back here. Last year's defense wasn't as bad. because the talent disappeared. It was bad because they couldn't stay healthy. They couldn't pressure the quarterback. Everything just snowballed. And look, when your pass rush disappears, your secondary gets exposed. You give up explosive plays, and that's really what happened. But with Matabuke healthy, Hendrickson arriving, Minter taking over, Anthony Weaver, the young defensive coordinator, he's still at the helm here. I think the defense takes a big step forward. So let's look at the schedule and where we see this team. Can they get above the 11.5 number that Vegas has hung on them? So, look, another reason I like Baltimore, strength of schedule, 31st out of 32 teams. So, again, fairly easy schedule. Again, these teams are going to beat themselves up in this division. But, again, one of the easier schedules in the league, and that matters, especially for a first-year coach at Minter. You got some help here from the scheduling folks at the league office. Now, the early portion of the schedule, very manageable here. Let me take a look here. Let me pull this up. So if we break down I'm not going to go game by game here, but just to give you an idea, the front half of their schedule, especially again for a first-year coach in Minter. All right, so they open at Indianapolis, and then home against the Saints, and then they get Dallas, and then Tennessee, Atlanta, Cleveland, Cincinnati, Buffalo. Right, but to start off, especially for a first-year coach, it is manageable. So, which again, it gives Minter some time to settle in the job. And the bye coming in Week 10, it's an almost perfect split between the first and second half. And then if you look at a couple trends of this schedule that kind of stood out, Baltimore has covered 6 straight games against Houston. They're 7-1 against the spread in their last 8 trips to Cincinnati. Now, again, like we said, this AFC North division is never easy. They always beat up on one another. Even the Browns somehow remain competitive throughout the season, even though they're typically and have been one of the worst teams year in and year out. But the schedule is favorable for the Ravens to get off to a fast start here. Ravens last year finished 28th in pressure percentage, 28th in sacks, as we mentioned. And I don't think that's a coincidence because the Ravens are at their best when they're rushing the quarterback, they're hitting the quarterback, forcing mistakes, turnovers, and they're letting Lamar Jackson play with the lead. So if the defense gets back to creating pressure, I think everything falls into place here because on the offensive side of the ball, it's still virtually the same team. So how do we get to this number 11.5? It is one of the highest totals on the board for preseason win total predictions here. But I do understand why. Like I said, the offensive side of the ball hasn't changed. It really hasn't changed. Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, a rebuild offensive line, a healthier defense. Trey Hendrickson now comes in. Second easiest schedule in all the league. And look, this organization knows how to win. They know how to win. They know how to develop talent. They've been doing it for years. Yes, Harbaugh there for 18 years. Losing him does mean a lot, but maybe kind of lost. His voice kind of got lost in the locker room, and they just kind of tuned him out. Because again, I don't think Ravens team overall had injuries and whatnot last year. I don't think they forgot how to play football, and I also don't think John Harbaugh forgot how to coach. I think it's sometimes just like 18 years is a long time in one place, and sometimes just the voice falls on deaf ears, and it was time to move on, I think, for both sides. But again, the Ravens, they filled in the gaps, and they saw what their inefficiencies were last season, and they made the moves in the offseason to bolster that and come back ready to attack this thing. And look, it's a lot to ask for a first-year coach to win 12 games. However, it's not a typical first-year coach situation. Jesse Minter inherited a pretty damn good football team on both sides of the ball. With that being said, I'm taking the over here with the Ravens. I think, again, just like we did last week with the Lions, I'm buying the bounce back here with Baltimore. I just think last season was the outlier, not the beginning of a decline here. Yeah, the injuries piled up, the pass rush disappeared. Like we said, offensive line had a slight regression there, but they still only finished one game below 500. Lamar Jackson, healthy coming into camp. Matabuke healthy. A lot better offensive line. A lot better pass rush. And look, they got a gift from the scheduling office in the NFL. So I look, not only do I think they get over the 11.5 number, I think they win the AFC North. And I think they reminded everyone fairly quickly that this is why they've been one of the NFL's model organizations for the better part of the last 2 decades here. All right, so we got Cleveland. Just to recap where we're at so far, as we preview the AFC North, we got one team left, and that's the Pittsburgh Steelers. So far we said we're taking Cleveland under the 6.5. We're taking over the Bengals 9.5, and we're buying the bounce back here with the Ravens and taking over 11.5. So let's go to your defending AFC North champions, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, obviously, one thing, a couple of things, 2 things obviously jump out, right? Mike McCarthy now steps in for Mike Tomlin, and Aaron Rodgers, apparently this is his last season. He's going to ride off into the sunset. I think the bigger question here is Mike McCarthy and not Aaron Rodgers. Like ESPN and talking heads there will probably spend the better part of the season talking about Aaron Rodgers. I don't think the Steelers story to me is not Aaron Rodgers. It really comes down to Mike McCarthy. I think the real discussion here with the Steelers, again, Rodgers one more season to give it a go. Okay, fine. To me, the real discussion with the Steelers is, can Mike McCarthy finally get this style of offense into the modern NFL game? Or was Mike Tomlin really covering up more problems than anyone realized? I mean, how much will the Steelers miss the Mike Tomlin voodoo? It's a great discussion, really, because look what Mike Tomlin has done. Never had a losing season while he was coaching the Pittsburgh Steelers. He won a ridiculous number of close games with mediocre point differentials. That's not something you replace overnight. And while Mike McCarthy is a good coach, I don't know if he's a Mike Tomlin level coach. But look, the Steelers, as we go through this, recap and then get you set up for what we think they're going to do this season. I think this team really is the hardest team in the division to figure out because on paper they did actually get better. And we'll get to that. Now, again, I don't think McCarthy's better than Tomlin, but again, he is a good coach, and he knows how to win in this league. He's a hometown kid, so that does matter, growing up in the Pittsburgh area. And then you still do have Aaron Rodgers coming back for a final hurrah there in Pittsburgh. Now, how much you get from Aaron Rodgers? Again, look, you can't stop Father Time, right? So, it's one of those things where Aaron Rodgers has to know his limitations, and the Pittsburgh Steelers also have to know they can't push him and make him do things that he's not capable of doing, as Aaron Rodgers did 5-10 years ago. Now, what I do like is they added Michael Pittman Jr. They did upgrade the offensive line, and they continued to rebuild the secondary. But again, it all comes back to losing Tomlin. And look, whether you love the guy, you criticized him, you hated the guy, you can't ignore what this guy accomplished. 19 seasons, never a losing record. Division, who would have thought, we were sitting here last year, who would have thought the Pittsburgh Steelers at 10-7 would have won the AFC North last year? I mean, You would have been, you're out of your fucking mind when you look at the Ravens or even the Bengals. But nonetheless, the Steelers did win it at 10-7 last year. And now for the first time in nearly 2 decades, the Steelers have a new voice in the locker room, a new voice leading this organization. Vegas has the win total set at 8.5, plus 500 to win the AFC North, 22-1 to win the AFC, and 50-1 to win the Super Bowl. Power ranking has them ranked somewhere around the 20th team in the league. So the betting market believes that this is a competitive football team. Probably not a true contender, to be honest, but the question is, how much can Mike McCarthy squeeze out of Aaron Rodgers in his final hurrah here before he rides off into the sunset? Or, like we said, was Mike Tomlin covering up more flaws than anybody realized? We're going to find out pretty quick. So again, last season, 10-7, somehow won the division. Would have never thought that prior to the start of last season, but the season ended almost immediately, though. Even though they won the division, getting into the playoffs, I mean, they lost the wild card round, so that made it 6 straight playoff exits without a win. That's probably, like, I guess, if you had to look at Tomlin in one of the very few blemishes he has on his record, that would probably be one of them, with the 6 straight playoff exits without a win. And that was enough for Tomlin to walk away. Now the question is, did he walk away? Was he given the ultimatum to resign or before? Who knows there? But again, probably good for both sides. Almost like the Harbaugh situation in Baltimore. Sometimes you just need a change. 18, 19 years, that's a long time. That's a long time, especially when you look at a team like the Cleveland Browns that feels like they change a coach every couple of years. And a lot of teams do that, right? It's this win now mentality. If you don't win now, you're out the door. But sometimes these teams like Cleveland who keep this revolving door of coaches coming in, sometimes you got to look at, is it really the coach's fault? Did I give the coach enough talent to actually contend or even have a shot at having a winning season? So, the Steelers, again, they have improved. But I think it was one of those things where there was talk for the past few years about, Tomlin should probably go or they should let him go. Again, it was almost, like I said, the Harbaugh situation was similar to that, where it's you need somebody else running this team and steering this ship. Nothing against Tomlin, but again, sometimes your voice just falls on deaf ears at some point. But and last year the Steelers weren't great, but they weren't bad either. I mean, it was almost like, I guess one way to describe it, there's this, okay, they're all right. They could beat good teams, but then they could also lose to average teams, and they're just kind of middle of the pack. Defense wasn't dominant. Offense wasn't explosive. And that's typically where those teams finish. They're good enough to win a weak division, because it was weak last year when you had the injuries with Burrow and with Lamar Jackson and the things going wrong in Baltimore. I mean, hell, you probably could even said if Cleveland would have had a couple more pieces, maybe they would have even contended for this division last year. It's hard to say, right? But it was an off year for this entire division, up and down. So the Steelers, they were good enough to win this weak division last year. But again, the division prior to the season start, nobody would have thought it would have been a weak division last year. But again, good enough to win this weak division, but no one ever thought, even though Pittsburgh got in the playoffs, unless you're a Homer Steelers fan, there was no way you're saying, oh, the Steelers get to the playoffs, they're going to the Super Bowl. Maybe you put a couple shekels on it because there's a long shot just in case it does hit because it's your team. But there was no way in hell in your right mind. You were like, yeah, you know what? They're going to get to the Super Bowl, but not only going to get there, they're going to win the thing. It just wasn't – the cards weren't stacked in their favor. And we said the defense wasn't typical Steelers defense we've seen in the past. However, when you look at the Steelers, they're known for a great defense, right? You always think that they're dominant. They've always been dominant. But then you look last year, 29th in passing yards allowed, they just give up way too many explosive plays, blown coverages all throughout the season. But there was a bright side. 6th in sacks, 4th in takeaways. But they weren't this dominant defense that we've come to expect year in and year out with Pittsburgh Steelers teams as well as Mike Tomlin coach teams. And that really was one of the biggest disappointments of the entire season was their defense. And then we said the offense, no explosive plays on offense. I mean, they were really predictable. Really, they just ran into stacked boxes. They ranked among league leaders in rushing attempts against loaded fronts. They didn't have the personnel to really get it going and make it work. They finished bottom 10 in the league in rushing, 30th in runs, gaining 4 yards or more. Well, then there's Aaron Rodgers. Got rid of the football quicker than almost anyone in the league, and the result, very few explosive plays, very little vertical passing, an offense that really didn't scare anybody. So we said to me, the biggest question, again, most people we talk about Aaron Rodgers and his last season and whatnot, the big question is, Mike McCarthy stepping in for Mike Tomlin, and did Mike Tomlin really mask the inefficiencies of this offense? But can Mike McCarthy now modernize this offense and bring it up to the level of play that we've seen this league and where these other teams are at? I mean, if you look at Mike McCarthy's career, he has consistently elevated quarterback play. I mean, look what he did for reviving Brett Favre's career. And then, obviously, the work he's done with previously with Aaron Rodgers and developed him into a Hall of Famer. And then, believe it or not, his short time in Dallas, he did help Dak Prescott become an MVP candidate and had his name thrown in the hat for MVP. Now he gets to coach Rodgers one final time. And again, I think what's an upside here and something for Steelers fans to be excited about is the offense should look different. I mean, the Steelers last season used 3 wide receivers at the second lowest rate in the NFL. Well, that changes now. They now have DK Metcalf, Michael Pittman Jr., Jeremy Bernard. And then now suddenly this passing game actually has weapons. So I think the offense here under McCarthy becomes more aggressive and a lot more difficult for teams to defend against, right? And unlike Baltimore, the offseason wasn't about tweaking the roster. It was about changing the identity of the offense. For nearly 20 years, the Steelers have been built around defense, running the football and avoiding mistakes. Now Mike McCarthy brings a different philosophy. He wants to throw the football, wants to spread the defenses out. Honestly, I think that's what Pittsburgh needed. Again, nothing against Tomlin. It's just it kind of just run its course with him, right? And then, okay, so we'll get to Aaron Rodgers, of course. We said it's his last season. One last hurrah. Sign that 1-year deal. Maybe everything's coming full circle with McCarthy. I mean, it is a good way for him to go out, with all everything Mike McCarthy's done to get Aaron Rodgers to where he is now and the career that he's had in the NFL. Look at Rodgers last season, completed nearly 66% of his passes through 24 touchdowns, only 7 interceptions. But let's be honest, the offense around him was not explosive enough. I mean, but now this season he finally has more weapons to work with. So I think that's going to make a noticeable difference. I mean, like we said, the wide receiver room, they got much better with Michael Pittman Jr., drafting Jeremy Bernard. You got DK Metcalf, right? So it feels like it's more balanced on the offensive side of the ball. You're not asking Aaron Rodgers to constantly throw to one wide receiver downfield. So that alone should make the passing game much harder to defend and give them more options now on the offensive side of the ball. And then we talked about the offensive line. That's another priority to improve the protection for Aaron Rodgers. And one thing that's really interesting, because statistically, the Steelers look good. They rank 2nd in pressure percentage allowed and 9th in sacks. But look, it's I think those numbers are misleading, Because Aaron Rodgers got rid of the football faster than anybody in football. He threw in under 2.5 seconds. It was more than half the time compared to the rest of the league. So, yeah, the pressure numbers look great, but it also meant the Steelers finished dead last in intended air yards. I mean, they rarely pushed the football downfield, right? So what did they do? They attacked the offensive line, right? Added Jennings Dunker, brought in Brock Hoffman, did well in the draft with getting some guys to fill some gaps in the offensive line. So the goal really here is to give Aaron Rodgers enough time and let plays actually develop instead of just quick chucking the ball. And then on the defensive side is which TJ Watt shows up. And that's a big question with this roster. So for years, he's been one of the most dominant players in football. And last season, had the partially collapsed lung, missed 3 games, only finished with 7 sacks. And he ranked 31st among qualified edge rushers. Now, TJ Watt is still a good player, but this isn't the TJ Watt that we've been accustomed to watching on Sundays. So I think the question with this becomes, was last season simply related to injuries? Or is Father Time starting to catch up with TJ Watt? Because, look, if Watt can return to that Defensive Player of the Year form, then automatically this defense becomes much more dangerous. So the verdict is out on that. We'll have to wait and see. So let's take a look at the schedule here before we wrap up 4th and goal here and wrap up our prediction here with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And then we'll give you a rundown of our final predictions and how we see these teams finish in this division. So, one reason why I'm cautious on this number, or I guess I'm not as optimistic as I should be, even though we highlighted what Mike McCarthy can do compared to what Mike Tomlin did with this offense last season. One thing that has me a little more pessimistic than optimistic here is I'm just a little cautious with this schedule. Now, while it's, again, toward the bottom of strength of schedule, it's not brutal, but there's some challenges here. Let me pull this up. So this whole NFL scheduling with these fucking international games is just, I hate it, to be honest with you. It's just a money grab, in my opinion. But so the Steelers don't get a bye until after their game in fucking Paris. Whatever. So they have 3 sets of back-to-back road games. They play 3 short week games. That's not ideal, especially for a 43-year-old Aaron Rodgers. Now, one thing I also love, if you look at trends against division opponents, the Steelers have, from a betting standpoint at least, the Steelers have covered 13 of the last 19 home games against Cincinnati. And they're 11-3-1 against the spread last 15 home games against the Browns. So again, these AFC North games are really going to decide, I think, where this team finishes. Like I said, when we went through the other teams here, they're all just going to beat up amongst one another. And even Cleveland, with some of the changes they made on defense, they might be more competitive than what people think. And it always doesn't matter if one team in the game is the best team in the division and the other team is the worst team. Somehow those games are still competitive, right? So again, that's why I think these teams are just going to beat up on themselves here. And I just thought of something about the Ravens I forgot to show you guys, but I'll show it before we get out of here because I think it's a pretty cool video. That's bad on me because I was too excited to get to the fucking Steelers, right? Let's see. Let's see if I missed anything here from last season. If you look, I just feel like looking last year at the Steelers, they won more games than the numbers said they should. There's a lot of games they came into and looking at the numbers like this team's not winning this fucking game, but somehow they outperformed their point differential. They consistently won those close games last year, and they found a way to win 10 games and win the division. So The roster wasn't one of the league's best, but again, that's what you got with Mike Tomlin teams. Again, never had a losing season in 19 years. So, question is, then it becomes there: can Mike McCarthy duplicate that? Because if he can't, this may be a better football team that actually wins less games than Tomlin won last year. Possible. I mean, we just went through and laid out reasons why this team should be better on offense. But if they can't get to that number, well, then, again, they would be, like I said, a better football team that wins fewer games than last year. So 8.5, like we said, is where the number is projected to be for what Vegas hung as a number. Number makes sense to me. I do think Pittsburgh has improved. I think the offense is going to be better. I think Mike McCarthy was a good hire. While some questioned it, I think it was a good hire. Especially Mike McCarthy being from the Pittsburgh area. I think the Steelers went out, they improved the wide receiving core. There are still major concerns, though, or major questions as well. Is it, 43-year-old Aaron Rodgers? How much gas you got left in the tank? I don't know. What do we got on defense? What do we got with Watt? Is he, how much, like we said earlier, how much did Mike Tomlin cover up for this team on both sides of the ball? And there's still just the loss in general of Tomlin. Yeah, I don't know if, people who were quick to say, yeah, get rid of Tomlin, we need to move on. I don't think people realize or appreciate how many games Tomlin stole over the years, and they weren't expected to win and won. So with that being said, though, I feel like the team has improved. My official pick here, under 8.5 wins for Pittsburgh. Not because I dislike Pittsburgh. I think they're going to be more entertaining to watch than what we've seen in the past couple of years. A little bit more modern style offense. I think, Aaron Rodgers definitely has a better supporting cast now. Somehow, though, I feel like replacing Tomlin is much harder than replacing a quarterback here. I mean, for almost 20 years, they had the Steelers, one of the most stable organizations in the league. Now it's a completely new era in Pittsburgh. And like I said, I think Mike McCarthy is a very good football coach. You could argue maybe he's even a great coach. I just don't think that transition is seamless here. So I think Pittsburgh under 8.5. So we said the Browns under 6.5, Cincinnati over 9.5, Baltimore over 11.5, Pittsburgh under 8.5. Again, AFC North, one of the deepest, one of the toughest, and I feel like this is one of the hardest divisions to handicap in the league this season. So let's put a bow on this thing. Like we said, a tough division here. That we've broken down. Look, every single team has a legitimate question. Cleveland rebuilding under Monken, trying to figure out who the hell their quarterback is, what their quarterback future looks like. Cincinnati, again, Joe Burrow, one of the best quarterbacks in football. They finally have to prove that they can play defense with the upgrades they made on the defensive side of the ball. And then Steelers entering a brand new era, moving on from the Tomlin era to the Mike McCarthy era, and one last go of it with Aaron Rodgers. And, with Baltimore, they're trying to just prove last season it wasn't just a bump in the road, and it was, they're actually a team that can be a legit Super Bowl contender. So, under 6.5, like we said, for Cleveland. I do like some of the moves they made, and especially on the defensive side of the ball. So, again, if they keep doing this over the next couple of off seasons, I think Cleveland, once they figure out the quarterback situation, which is probably going to be decided more next year than with getting rid of Watson and his money. But again, if they keep trending in this right direction and they continue to build in the next few seasons off of what they've done this past offseason, I think Cleveland could make some noise and give them a couple years, but still like them under 6.5. Bengals over 9.5. Look, the health question with Burrow. think the defense improved enough, and I think the Bengals get back to the postseason. We said Ravens over 11.5. We're buying the bounce back there. The schedule's easy schedule. I think the moves they made in the offseason, I think Jesse Minter's a good hire. Declan Doyle, the players seem to like what he's doing on that side of the ball. And then we said Steelers under 8.5. I just think replacing Tomlin is a little bit bigger than what people think. While they will be better offensively, I just, I don't know, again, how much you get out of Aaron Rodgers at 43 years old. It can even get through the whole season. It's asking a lot, and I think just replacing Tomlin in general. So there it is. Ravens, your AFC North winner. Bengals, the runner-up. Steelers coming third, and the Browns back in the basement. So what I'll be watching all season, it's not really Lamar Jackson. It's not Burrow. It's not Rodgers. It's really the coaches here. I mean, this division has 3 new head coaches, and we got a coach on the fucking hot seat. I mean, dude, his seat's hot. You better hope he gets off to a good start. And so this whole division really is trying to redefine itself, right? I just can't remember the last time the AFC North had this much uncertainty surrounding this whole division as we head into the season. Now, who I'll give you a couple, biggest surprise, so to speak. So I guess most likely to exceed expectations or biggest surprise, the Bengals, I think. The 9.5, I think they do better than that, especially if Joe Burrow is healthy. I like the moves they made on defense. I think they addressed that. So that's my biggest surprise, or most likely to exceed expectations. The biggest wild card is really the Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, and look, the Steelers could win 11 games. They could win 6 or 7. And I wouldn't be shocked by if either one of those happened with the Steelers. There's just a lot of unknown, which makes them the biggest wild card. And obviously the biggest rebuild goes to the Cleveland Browns. But I do like where they're headed with the moves that they made and what we discussed here with the Browns. But they have to have patience during this rebuild. They have to understand it's not going to happen overnight, and it's going to take a couple of years. But again, they keep doing this in the next couple of off seasons. I think Cleveland could right their ship. And I still think the Ravens are the measuring stick here. I think they're the team to beat. So, yeah, I think that's how it shapes up. I think we get Baltimore as your winner, over the 11.5 win total. Bengals over 9.5. Steelers under 8.5. Browns under 6.5. So I think it shapes up in that order. And I want to play this video quick of. This is the new Ravens PA announcer. This makes you want to run through a fucking wall hearing this guy. And this guy's going to have people amped up down there in Baltimore for Ravens games. The new PA announcer, a quick video of him announcing the players as they were walking into start training camp the other day. This dude, this will get you all fired up, that's for sure.
Now arriving, the 2-time Pro Bowler. Fastest player in Ravens history to reach 100 career receptions. Hailing from Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Out of Boston College. Wide receiver number 4, Zay Flowers.
You got a good voice.
The best safety in the league. 2-time first-team All-Pro. The chess piece himself. Number 14, Kyle Hamilton.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
By way of Virginia Tech and Duke University, number 90, Aeneas Peebles. Won the Heisman at the University of Louisville.
It is crazy. Oh, funny.
First round of the 2018 draft. Certified best on-field trip of any defensive back in the NFL. Number 2, cornerback Nate Wiggins. It's number 21, safety Jalen Hawkins.
Yeah. I like this. This is dope.
Number 39, Keandre Jackson.
Let's go, man. Come on.
Hailing from San Jose, California, out of the University of Colorado, number 3, Sidobe Awuzie.
We here, baby. Let's go. Your team, bud. You know what time it is?
Derrick Henry. He ran the fastest 40-yard dash of any offensive lineman at the Combine. From Highlands Ranch, Colorado, and the University of Washington, number 70, Roger Rosengarten.
Let's go, man.
He transferred to the University of Indiana and became a national champion.
What an intro, y'all. That's what I'm talking about.
John Jenkins.
That was good, man. Hey, man. I love you, man. I love you, man. That was good. That was good. That was different.
Drafted in the 3rd round of the 2026 NFL Draft. From Mesa, Arizona, coached by Ravens legend Todd Heap. At 6'4", wide receiver number 6, Jacoby Lane.
I feel like I'm in the UFC. Let's go.
Oh, that's lit. That's lit.
Thanks, man. That's lit. That's lit. That's lit. Appreciate you.
Yeah. That Ravens PA announcer, man. I don't know what the fucking other guy sounded like that they had there, but that fucking guy, that'll get you all fired up before the game even starts. That was pretty cool. I like how they did that with those guys starting training camp. It's a good way to fire them up. Maybe the Ravens, maybe they are a team to beat. I don't know. But that is one way to get the crowd fired up for sure. Even get the players seem to love it. I think that's great. Had a little fun with it. So good on them. Should be a good division to watch this season. AFC North. Should be exciting for sure. So another division down, another one in the books. We started with the NFC West, and then a couple weeks ago we had our good buddy Dustin Sweetelson on from VSiN. Went through the AFC East, went through the NFC North last week, and now we got you the AFC North. So now on deck for next week will be the NFC East. That's on tap for next week, and if everything lines up correctly, our boy Dustin Sweetelson from VSiN will be back, and that means Eagles fan. He's a Giants fan, so we will go head-to-head. Maybe a little trash talk there. Definitely a few disagreements, spirited disagreements nonetheless. But we'll go through the NFC East next week, and the Eagles run it back. Cowboys, they in the mix. Redskins, what are they going to do? And Dustin's Giants. Are they going to make a run at this thing maybe with Harbaugh? I don't know. We'll go team by team. We'll find the betting value and see if Eagles can get knocked off. So make sure you subscribe, because that one you will not want to miss. And look, if today's show gave you a reason to think differently, laugh a little bit, maybe find an edge, that's what 4th and Goal is all about. We'd love to have you along for the ride and for the hang. Subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on X at OTH Sports Pod. Every subscription, every follow, every share, it all helps us to continue to grow this thing the right way. We're building this community here 5 days a week. No paywalls, no VIP packages, no subscription fees, just football, betting insight, and a community of people trying to get a little bit better every day. Come for the bet, stay for the hang. Yo, if you're not using Pickett, come on. Get that Pickett app, put in code OTH when you set up your account, sync your book, and hey, it's what powers the Pickett play of the day. Let you track your bets, your friends, all the live movements all in one place with Pickett. And like I said, off the hook, we are here 5 days a week, and 4th and Goal drops every week to get you a division preview every football Friday between now and the start of college and NFL season. And we said NFC East is on deck with our boy Dustin Sweetelson next week. That's going to be a fun one for sure. And also college football preview is coming up in a couple weeks. We'll be sure to let you know when that one drops. And we got football next week. It might not be regular season, but Hall of Fame game next week. So it officially starts now. We will be talking football every week now, here on out. So And Tommy Trends, as always, Mookie and Nash staring me down, wondering why I'm still talking instead of going for a walk. This is Off the Hook, sports talk that pays off. Remember, the books don't give refunds. Do your homework, shop the lines with Pickett. Never stop looking for an edge. Come for the bets, stay for the hang. Good luck in your bets. Good luck on filling out your preseason football futures, all that good stuff, fantasy drafts. Let's cook the books. Let's cash some tickets this football season. It's walkie time. We'll see you next week with Dustin Sweetelson from VEASAN. NFC East is on deck. This is 4th and Goal. We'll see you.